Majojan Madden Juanito in my hospital bed at Mission Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm going to make an entry about maybe a dozen years ago. I taught a course here in Asheville, a dialogue course on maybe the most powerful dialectic that I know of, connection and separation. My partner in the class who had designed the class was a woman named Perry Gray, who has since passed on, who was one of the deepest people I've ever known. And she would kick every class off with just some kind of little poem of her own or from someone else, a little passage about connection or separation. We had 5 therapists in there who were all deep thinkers and people willing to share. And I don't remember anything specifically about the conversation, but it went really deep. Connecting with people and separating from people. And on display tonight, I had one that was related to it somehow. It was attachment and separation. Attachment. I had a nurse aide today that I got so attached to in 2 days that when it was time for her to be going, I was going, I don't want her to come say goodbye because I have nothing, I can't do a good job of it. I can't adequately say goodbye to her because I got so attached to her and I thought she was so great. And then finally I realized she's not coming. She's not coming. It's half hour after her shift. She's not coming. And I was relieved. And I asked myself, was there anything missing? Was there anything I did not communicate? No. I had certainly let her know quite fully how spectacular she was. About as much as you possibly could without making things weird. And it never tipped into that. It was just right. So then I thought about 2 goodbyes in my past, one of which I love the way we handled it, and one of which feels real poignant and sad. Vicky Skipper and I knew each other from reevaluation counseling, where you would get deeply close with each other, and there was a lot of touch, so certainly we had touched each other. I'm slurring my words because of my urinary tract infection. She had a boyfriend at the end. In co-counseling, you were not supposed to set up any kind of relationship other than that, and we honored that. But we were crazy about each other, and I knew it. We never talked about it, but when I left Syracuse after 8 years there or whatever, somehow, the details are maybe not exact, but basically, she took me to the train in her car. And it was a warm night, and she was sitting there in the driver's side of her car, and we planted one on each other. We had an open-mouth kiss that was so delicious. And we just stood back and looked at each other, and were happy because we finally said non-verbally what we wanted to say to each other. It was just right. It was just right. It wasn't, there was nothing regret about it. It was like, boom, we needed that. And the other one I want to share that has always felt so poignant. My roommate Marge was a bartender and a bodybuilder and mother of 7 and fun, interesting person. And somewhere along the way, we fell into bed together, and I had never made love to such a hard body, and I found her incredibly exciting. And we had maybe 2 or 3 nights. This was just a few years after my divorce, a couple years after my divorce. And 2 or 3 nights that were wonderful, great sex and very loving, really loving. And then she pulled away. And for whatever reason, we never talked about what was going on. Maybe neither of us had the tools or just didn't know how. And then when I was leaving, when I was moving away, my truck was parked full. I had packed the truck. I was going to leave early the next morning. She was working a bartending shift late. I left a note for her saying, "Come on in and say goodbye. Let's have a goodbye." I've imaged that maybe we would at least hug, cuddle a little bit. what I found was a note from her the next morning saying, "Sorry, I can't do it. And the reason I pulled back was I fell in love with you. I couldn't handle it." And it wasn't, and when I tried to puzzle it out, was it because she just didn't want the intensity? She was still too hurt from her last relationship, or because of the dominance of monogamy as a model in our society? She knew we just weren't destined to be long term, and she didn't want to go there. Felt so sad. I always felt sad. Yeah. And I tracked her down a few years ago, and she went on to become a prison guard. And I was not able to reach her somehow. But it felt sad to me, like, well, what a missed opportunity. What was good got cut off for some reason. So then I'm committed to keeping this kind of short. So the new nurse, I know I'm leaving tomorrow, and I was saying to myself, you are not going to get attached to the new nurse, because both the nurse and the aide the last 2 days you're so attached to. So she comes in and she's big, way overweight. So I'm going, good, you're not going to be sexually attracted to her. And something quirky and odd about her. And I said, good. But then she admitted she was from Jamaica, and her whole style of talking was very musical, and she kept calling me love, my love. And my heart just totally, I fell for her. And when she was going to leave, I said, I didn't want to like you because I told her the story. But I do. In spite of myself, I like you a lot. And she says, yeah, I like you a lot too. Then she came back in and peeled off. I think there's some kind of special precautions because of my uterine infection, where everybody puts on a gown before they come in here. So she went back and stood in the doorway and pulled off her gown. and I couldn't resist saying to her, and by the way, when you took off your gown just now, I got really turned on, which I had. It was true, I had. And we both had a good laugh. And she said, thank you for helping me laugh. And I said, thank you to you. You helped me laugh. Yeah. Go figure, huh? Us people? Ain't we a pip? Yes, we are. Nighty night.